Sparkly soda, shooting out your nose at breakfast. It hurts so much, but you're having a good time. And all you want to eat is a teeny weeny wiener that's a dripping with the mustard at lunch. Hey, Leslie.
What's the story behind that?
I don't know.
Was that an event that happened? Because most of your songs seem to be about an event.
I don't know.
Like the Roundabout song.
Well, there's a couple of roundabout songs, but
Are there?
remember when you frowned about the roundabout, when I was a whipping you good through the neighborhood. That one.
Why did I frown?
And then you tried to
Because you
scold
were
me.
whipping.
Oh, yeah. You have fear of high velocity.
Yeah. Soft, fleshy body hurtling through space in a metal box.
It's a capsule. Mm-hmm. It's a very highly engineered capsule specifically designed for whipping you about the neighborhood.
I don't like to think about it that way. I like to think of it as a transport mechanism, I guess.
Yeah, that's very
that just gets me from one place to another place. Yeah. And I like to do it as safely as possible.
You know what? If we were talking about religion, I would decry you as a utilitarian. You know how people use utilitarianism? Like, you just think religion is utilitarian.
What do you mean?
I'm not really sure.
Good for the greatest number?
It's something about, like when they're like, well, I don't believe in God myself, but I like being in a Christian society, because Christian society produces the society that I want to live in, rather than like for its own God for God's sake or God for spiritual sake. It's more of like it's a useful thing. It reduces, and I don't know why people have, they lean a little too much, it seems, on utilitarianism as a bad thing. But if something doesn't actually work, that is a part of what makes it a part of the good. So there's a utilitarian aspect to anything.
Utilitarianism is an administrative perspective. Above all, it sort of has this attitude that we should be able to control other people. And that's the part that I find really confounding. Like if you can say, well, I don't think that this is necessarily good for me, but I think it's good for everybody else to be doing. Well, then you're sort of positing the existence of someone who can dictate for other people what should be done. And so it's a collectivist perspective.
Which is not inherently bad. You can't have individualism without collectivism.
Well, it's kind of...
We just as liberals, we want a soft collectivism.
Is that what we want? Really?
We've had this conversation many a time. Many a time.
I guess it just depends on what your collective is. I mean, how big is that number? What's the scale? Because if we're doing it in the small scale, like a family is a collective, and so a family could utilize some utilitarian principles. Like we compromise in order to be able to live together. Maybe you don't get to do all the things you want to do because your brother wants to do some things too. And so you compromise and he compromises and you both get most of what you want. So utilitarianism on that scale is great. And then how far out does that go before it starts to sort of implode on itself? And you get things like the problems that we've seen over the past few years with authoritarian ideologies. Power control structures.
I had an interview on Friday that'll be publishing in a few days here with Bennett's Phylactrix. His name is Kevin, and he runs this group called Exit, which is kind of a men's group, a professional men's group. There's all these different kind of, in the dissident right sphere, the more serious members of that group, after going through the debate and doing the reading and doing the critique of where we're at right now, they invariably lean towards smaller collectives, building high trust society networks. And in the interview, and actually in his article, which is really good, which is why I wanted to interview him, he's talking about, he's critiquing the propositional nation, like this nation that's built out of ideas rather than relationships. And if you look anthropologically at the history of humanity, power or rule, whichever is the best term that you want to use. You could say control, but it's more about rule, stewardship, which does involve an element of control, of dictates.
Yeah.
Up until the propositional nation proceeded from the nation state, which was based in an area of control. And then prior to that, you had the feudal lands, which were based on this fractal family structure that plugs in the so-called Dunbar number, 130 people that you can actually know and trust.
And actually care about.
It plugs that in from the peasants to the minor nobility to the upper nobility to the aristocracy and then to the king, and they're all it's all nested.
I like
It's all,
that as a fractal. That makes a lot of sense.
it's all nested in this paternal filial relationship. It's like the father's the head of the house, the lord's the head of the. I don't know all the names,
Right.
the duke or whatever,
Right.
and then the king. Whether or not these relationships are used cynically or authentically, it's still formalized as there's the father, and
Right.
he
The
is
structure maintains.
he's our steward. And so the argument from a Yarvanite perspective for monarchy is that your servants or the people that you rule are your property, and they reflect upon you your worth. And there's a direct line of accountability between the monarch and his subjects in a nested way. If the father's not doing well in the family, then there are structures slightly above him to break up the family, divorce, or at least interventions from a local community, and that nests its way up all the way to the top. If you have a tyrannic king, it's reflected in that his subjects are suffering. Just like if a father's not doing a good job, I don't know the proper means of solving that, but one suspects that a community, like a church community or a local community, is probably ancestrally or historically the best way to
Perhaps so.
deal with those problems.
Maybe. I guess the monarchy thing, though, monarchy doesn't necessarily imply feudalism or anything like it. It's just somebody in charge, one head, one ruler, which could be anything underneath of that. It could be complete tyranny. It could be something that's a little bit more democratic with a little bit more of a feedback structure.
Yeah, constitutional monarchy,
And
I believe.
at the end of the day, to me, it's about the scale. It's not about what form of government you institute. It's about scale.
Yeah. And the problem with scale, as we've talked about many a time, this is a running theme for us, is that I don't know how we extricate ourselves
How do
from
we
scale.
descale?
How do you have
scale back?
How do you get to a technocratic, uber centralized
That's
society?
a huge question.
And also have a Costco.
Well, do you
And
really
also
need the
have gas.
Costco?
What are our other options?
I don't know. You could start homesteading. I mean, around here, there's lots of farms that sell their produce. We buy a lot of our produce in the summer from local growers. And those kind of supply chains that are sending out the heavily preserved and processed things, that's a lot of what you're getting when you're getting stuff in those big box stores.
Well, those big box
Like,
stores.
look at Safeway. There's almost nothing I can find in there that's edible. Almost nothing in that store. It's an entire store that I walk into it and I look for something that would be edible. And I'm like, I could maybe fill my little red shopping basket with things that I would find acceptable, but they're barely acceptable.
Yeah.
It's a useless store. We don't need that store.
The market decides, right? I mean, we don't need that store. This is based on human choice, right? Like some mixture of like humans.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that's not a huge sacrifice. If we sacrifice some of the things that we've become accustomed to, maybe we need to sacrifice some of those things. Maybe there's not much harm in scaling back some of those things.
But that scaling back implies some sort of power structure that makes the choice for everybody.
Yeah, perhaps so. Perhaps so. Or alternative communities. And power structure gets out of the way and allows those to form.
Well, that's the interesting thing about these parallel institutions. It's like they want to have enough power to have say and sway, but not enough power that they're the target. It's this really interesting kind of like you want to thread this needle and live kind of like do in like a game metaphor. Like there's these mini games that don't interact with the major power players. You kind of just live alongside this major structure, these major systems, don't get in their way. Use them to get your goods, right? Like interact with it wisely.
Yeah.
Like when we do go to Costco, you buy the products that are acceptable to you, and they crunch the data, and they're like, okay, well, there's this, and then
That's the feedback mechanism.
The adult positive liberal value system, means of modifying culture would be through education or through conversation. You're like, this is why this stuff is good, this is why this stuff is bad. You kind of just, you play with the open market on an information sphere in order to implement the desired outcome in the material sphere. You know what, we've been facing like this is just something that I notice. Like, we should be facing each other like this so that people can see our faces.
like
Yeah, this is the thing. So anyways, how are you guys doing? Oh, they're just typing.
We're typing. Hi, guys. I don't know how I guess our audio is good. We've had those times before where we've had to check and see if people are sending us messages about our audio.
So what have you done this holiday season, Leslie?
I hung out with you a lot, Benjamin.
What did we do on our hangout times?
We went on a vacation to a tropical place instead of the wet and cold place we live in.
We have a very fortunate connection on the Big Island near Hilo. That they go on vacation, and when you live in Hawaii, I guess
your house is vacation.
Your house is a vacation, but then you just go to another Hawaiian island for your vacation.
Yeah, just go visit other islands. Yeah, so we did that. We did that last year for New Year's and the first part of January. Yeah, and this year from Christmas till New Year's Day.
Yeah, we frugally occupied the island.
Yeah.
We visited
it's so nice. It's so funny to go into somebody else's home. Like you take your vacation in someone else's life. Isn't that interesting? Like you just move houses and you go live where somebody else lives for a little while. And you live like their weekend for a week. You know? Mm-hmm. Using their bowls and their... Yeah,
and then trying to put everything back.
Their fridge and their rooms
their
and
spices.
Their
You're like, why don't you have these spices? You have these other spices,
you
know?
It's so interesting.
They're cutting boards.
And they're driving paths and they're walking paths and you just inhabit part of somebody else's reality on a vacation.
Yeah. Well, is that strange or weird?
It's just very interesting. I like it. I like that. This gives us a chance to sort of, I don't know, get out of our own perspective. Mm-hmm. Whether it's somewhere that's a destination spot or you're just, I mean, even like when we went to Poulsbo and got an Airbnb there for Gwen's wedding. It's just still, it's kind of interesting. You just go and plunk down in somebody else's space and you call it vacation. Yeah. Something people are so entertained by seeing things differently. I think that's kind of a beautiful thing about people.
Entertainment. Novelty?
Yeah, novelty, but it's like the reflection of this contrasted with that. Like, I think that's part of why movies and television is so entertaining and interesting to us. It's like stepping into a different reality space. You get to open your mind to what if everything were different? What if I were this person? Yeah.
Or what if the world operated in a different way? Mm-hmm. Like a book that I read on the plane, I devoured it in one day.
Yeah, you loved that book.
Oh man, I have not read fiction. I can't recall reading much fiction since I started my YouTube channel. Once I started
reading last year, you read a couple of books.
Really?
You read Stranger in a Strange Land. I don't remember what else you
read.
I
didn't finish
just went through a few things.
Yeah, I kind of like thumbed through things, but the internet kind of fried my brain or changed it to a more auditorial, like an oral kind of thing. So I'd rather like listen to
stuff
than read stuff. But then I found that book. It's called There Is No Anti-Memetics Division by this anon account called Quantum or QNTM.
So this person is an anonymous author. Is it one person, do you think, or is it a collaboration?
It seems like one person. The consistency of the writing style is one person to me.
Well, yeah, that book seemed like it was one person, one author. But I wonder, because there's a series of short stories and
they all seem to be the same person. There's a stylistic consistency, and the spelling of certain words indicates that they are British. Anyways, the anti-memetics division, like I I got it to read on, and I read the first chapter. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I was kind of like, crap, I've already written a book just like this. And this person finished the book and published it. And now other people are reading it. My book's still in storage, And I'm like, oh, crap. But then I started reading it and it sucked me right in.
Yeah.
It just had the way that it was set up as these series of debriefs. Well, it was sprinkled. There's like the story chapters, and then there's these series of debriefs from this kind of pseudo governmental. What are they called?
Like
organization.
an NGO kind of thing.
Yeah, that deals with. There are these entities that have developed adaptations
To not be memorable.
to be anti-mimetic. Like you can't really remember them. You interact with them and you just forget about them.
Amnestic, they called it. Amnestic.
And then there's this division that goes and deals with them. And then like it's really interesting what happens in the plot. They realize like what they can't remember, and like there's this whole period. And then it gets really intense. And then you read it. You finished it on the plane back, so it's a full circle and stuff. And then I read that and I devoured it, and like it really charged me up, and like it kind of made me spooky because the way it was written, I'm like, this could actually be possible. Like my suspension of disbelief eroded really quickly.
Total. Yeah.
And my investment of belief was really primed. Like the whole Coleridge suspension of disbelief as a way of explaining how we interact with fiction is kind of I find it to be inadequate. It's not so much that you suspend disbelief as you are primed to invest your belief, to run the software of the book, right? You believe in it.
Okay.
Insofar as it captures your imagination, insofar as you pay your attention into it because it's interesting, then there's a feedback loop between you and the text where it kind of inhabits your imagination, right? Your attention is rewarded by running this believable thing. And then if the writer's good enough, you won't see little chinks in the armor, or if he's really good, then the chinks in the believability are a little played with. You're like, wait, is this real? Is this not real? What's going on? The way that the story it's a very postmodern novel in its form and its structure by using all these kind of hypertextualities and then in the construction going back and forth in time because of the way that the world works in order to reconstruct this story. It does make sense to go back and forth in time. It's just wonderful, just a wonderful construction. I think it's sold out right now. It got really popular.
Wow.
People. Well, actually, I think that's kind of the joke. People are like, I can't find this book. I can't find this book, because it's like memory hold, and they can't find it anywhere. But I think it's on Amazon print on demand. But people have been complaining about it being out of print.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm just looking at what people are saying. What novel? I missed it.
It's There Is No Anti-Memetics Division by QNTM, Quantum. And then after I was done with that, I read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, which I'd been meaning to read for a while. It was actually published in 1985.
Yeah, that sounds dark.
I do not think that you would enjoy at all. But
I won't read it.
No, you won't read it. It's these really long passages of description of this terrain. Just there's a lot of travel logs. It's like kind of like Tolkien, where he just takes like 5 paragraphs to talk about a tree, or whatever. It's just these long things, and then huge eruptions of terrible violence. And what really got me, and what I had to really stay away from, is like there's like animal violence or like descriptions of animals being either abused or suffering, and it was like that's where it's like, wow, that's like he's really describing suffering in this way. And there's this character. Yeah, I finished it on the plane back.
Okay. That's right.
There's the main character. Well, he's not even really a character. He's just like this vessel for the story called the kid. He's 14 when the book begins, and the main action happens over 2 years. And then there's like this epilogue where he's 28, I think.
Okay.
And then, but the center of the moral vessel of the story is this character called the Judge, which is this albino guy. From his description, he has no hair. He's this huge man, this huge bulky man with these small feet. And he's really good at anything. He's great at languages. He's this phenomenon. And he's always writing in this book, and he's always taking notes about everything. And he's kind of participating in the violence. I have to reread the book. And I would like to read more discussions about him because there's something about this character that is the vessel of the meaning of the book. And when he speaks at the end, or like every once in a while, he'll punctuate, and sometimes he's lying, he's telling these fantastic stories, and sometimes he's delivering these morals of the book. And it's a very Nietzschean moral. It's very, the world doesn't care about you, and the only way to prove yourself, the only game, mankind is men are gaming creatures. The child knows that play is more important than work. That's how we prove ourselves. And the only games that matter are games that have wagers, where there's a cost. And the only game in town, really the only game that matters is war. And I'm just speaking the judge's point of view.
Okay.
That when a man puts everything on the line, when he rolls the dice and either he dies or he doesn't die, that is the only moment where he connects with reality.
Okay.
That's the only moment when his true self is shown, and he's either
What a bleak
it's
worldview.
super bleak, but
Yeah.
the way that it's, I don't know, I have to reread it, and it seems
interesting.
the writing is really beautiful, but it seems rather dated. And so I'm going to read some McCarthy's later work to see.
You said that came out when?
In 1985.
Okay.
There's a poetry to it that just seems kind of like, oh, this was
The way we did things.
It might have worked there. It's kind of a Southern Gothic kind of Faulkner, Joycean kind of little bit of wordplay, really syrupy language, and but some of the words are kind of like been overused. So I think a lot of people took up some of his words, and they kind of were leached of their potency.
Yeah.
So I want to reread it again, but it put me in a mindset, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much. But
No, I'm glad you are.
it put me in a mindset of formulating the book that I'm contracted to write about detransitioners.
Yeah.
Rather than telling their story as this kind of reportage, like, I don't know, like Abigail Schreier would do, or Helen Joyce would do. They're totally different writers than me. But like more of like a journalistic, like, this is the story of this person, this is the story of that person, and here's the societal aspects, and like a research kind of thing.
Play-by-play.
Yeah, play-by-play, to really lean into the spiritual aspect of it. And going through my interviews, I just published an interview with Tally, who is this one, I published it yesterday. This young woman who in grad school or in college was really social justice-y, and convinced her lesbian wife, I mean, they're lesbians, convinced her wife, because her wife had gender nonconformity or whatever, convinced her wife to transition.
Wow, she convinced her.
She
was the one who...
She pushed her wife down the road of transition.
Wow, how do you deal with that?
And then she kind of woke up in a way.
Realized.
And the interviews, it's interesting. I sat on the interview for a while for one reason or another, and I just kicked it down the road. And then I was really out of content. I'm like, okay, it's time to publish this thing. And it's met a lot of... people are watching it. I don't know why, I don't know how much right now, but significant uptick in viewership, and then interaction.
Yeah.
It might be the title. The title's kind of like in your face. Somebody accused me of being clickbait, but it's literally, so I transed my lesbian wife. Like, that's literally what the story is.
Yeah.
But I was kind of scrubbing through that, and there's moments where I start to articulate things. There's a lot of silence in the interview. Somebody said that I found somebody whose pauses are as pregnant as mine.
Yours?
Apparently, I take a lot of pauses.
Yeah.
And she takes a lot of long pauses, and there's a lot of space. Yeah, she's really thinking about it.
I like pauses better than ums.
She's a certain amount of discipline in her speech, but there's a lot of pauses. So the interview could be compressed to 90
if you
minutes.
Chopped it up.
But it's 2.5 hours or so, like that.
Wow.
But there's these moments where I articulate things. I'm listening and listening and listening, and then I articulate things. And there's a way to interact with wokeness, social justice activism, gender, queer theory. And this is what I lean into it with the way that religious people are currently articulating societal phenomena as these powers and principalities rather than these systems or these conspiracies. Like, there are these emergent pseudo entities that run on human beings. Like there's these ideology that run on human beings that have a life of their own.
Yeah.
That kind of like
Memes.
use people, and then we can kind of go up and start to stab them, but they're really like dinosaurs. They're much greater than us.
Right.
And I was thinking about using a Cormac McCarthyian kind of spiritual, poetic point of view to communicate the reality that's taking these young people up into itself, chopping them up, and then just kind of like they somehow like just plop out of in these different forms.
Yeah.
And what actually happened to them? Like what was actually going on with them? And I think there's so much analysis about the theory and about, Schreier's work and Joyce's work about how the ideology works. But there's an opportunity for me to render that as this hijacking of a very primordial and important human process of metamorphosis, and transition being the blasphemous materialization of a spiritual process that we already always go through. When we go from a child to an adult, we're always entering into sex, and then we are initiated by one way or another, and then we become ourselves. And the queer theory or the gender ideology has hijacked this process.
That transition, because it's a painful transition.
It's a painful transition.
Painful metamorphosis.
And societies throughout history have always had rituals and rites to guide young people through that, and we kind of let that go. When we went into a post-religious world, there was just this thing that was hijacked, was waiting to be articulated, because the kids don't have the skills to articulate this stuff.
Yeah.
And it gives them this completely monstrous way of articulating.
Well, and then they go back into their families, their teachers, their the adults around them, and they express their discomfort, and they want them to do something about it. It's like an offshoring of that metamorphic experience. Like there are some things you have to do alone, so to speak. You have to be able to grapple with those changes because it's the process of individuation, but it's very uncomfortable, and you're being sold the idea that that discomfort should be alleviated, that that the goal of
there's a problem to be solved.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We watched that movie, The Return, the other night, with
Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. It's about Odysseus returning to Ithaca.
And there's more we could say about that if you want to talk about it.
Yeah,
but,
I'd love to.
At the end, Telemachus, they pronounce his name Telemachus. I don't know what's correct.
I
always
Telemachus
said,
a little better.
I always said Telemachus when I was reading it to the kids. But the young man, the son of Odysseus and Penelope, he leaves in this movie, not in the story, but in the movie he leaves, and Penelope is devastated by this. She's really worried about him, and he goes off. He's a young man, and he takes off after this big battle scene and this disruption in life. And Odysseus says, when he finds himself, he'll come back. And I thought that was really, that kind of ties into that thing you're talking about right there. It's like the finding of yourself. Because when you're a kid, you're not really, you're yours, but you're also your family's, and you're something that belongs to something else. You belong within this sort of nurture structure. But then as you become an adult, you have to make ready to provide a nurture structure for something else. So you have to become the self that can then beget more selves and nurture more. And there's that unfolding process, that fractal unfolding process. But the pulling away is a really delicate, painful developmental stage. It just is. Like it's when your kids get to be about 15, 16, 17, it starts, there's more discord, there's more stickiness, there's more bumping up against each other. And it's because this is a child who's ripping away and getting ready to be, this growth pressure that's building to make them seek their own path, and for you to be able to let them go also. That tension allows for the dissolution of those, of the basically like the sort of emotional umbilical cord that's still there.
Yeah.
And it's painful, but we're so over nurturing. I mean, this over nannying, the state being in everybody's, it's exemplified by this mother. This was what, last month or so, maybe 2 months ago. It's not that long ago.
It happens over and over again.
Yeah, it happens over and over again. But there was a big story about how her 10-year-old went for a walk.
Yeah, to the store.
He went for a walk and he got picked up, and then she got arrested because she didn't know where he was, because he had been allowed to go for a walk.
Yeah.
I mean, without like, he's not tethered to a cell phone. He didn't give explicit instructions. His mom didn't know. And you hear the backstory on this, and it's not like there's more to the story where he's some, abused, neglected child. It's simply that his mom was at a doctor's appointment and he was at the house by himself, or with his grandpa or something like that. And he went for a walk without telling anybody. And then it's not a, somebody's concerned and they say, hey, you might want to watch your kids. She actually got arrested and charged with child endangerment. And so, we have this culture that says, don't let them be independent. In fact, give them trigger warnings and protect their feelings and make sure that they always feel really, really safe. And within all of that, you find young people clinging to that safety and fearing the discomfort and being terrified of the change, because there's nothing safe about life. It's just not safe. Things happen. Like, your mother's going to die. My mom died. Your parents die. Children die. There's car accidents that happen. Your animals are going to pass away. People are going to get, people you love are going to be killed, and your body isn't guaranteed to you. Nothing is safe. And we want to create some world where it's all freaking Disneyfied, I remember watching The Little Mermaid when I was a kid. Did you ever watch the original cartoon of it? It's this little, it's like the Hans Christian Andersen. Yeah. It's based on that one. The mermaid is blonde. I remember that. And then they did the Disney one a few years later, or maybe, I don't know how many years later, but when I was very small, I saw the original Hans Christian Andersen one. And I read a lot.
Well, not original, but based
on
closely,
the original. Yeah. So I read a lot of the Grimm's fairy tales and the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. I used to, we'd go visit my grandparents, after all the adults would be talking, I would go upstairs, and my grandpa had this study where it was just a small home, but they had this one room that was like his office or his study. This is pre-computer, so there wasn't an office like we think of with a computer. It was just books and a desk, and the books were on really tall bookshelves around the room. And he had the Grimm's fairy tales and the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, these old books. And I would just sit on the floor in that room and read them. And they were horrifying. These were like the Little Match Girl and the Red Shoes and all these stories. And the Little Mermaid was such a sad story. And I remember just bawling reading that. Really? And also watching the original, not, I guess, as you say, maybe not original, but the old cartoon, the old version of it. It was so sad, but there was something really beautiful and poignant in that sadness. And then when the Disney one came out, and I went to see it in the theater with a friend. I must have been, I don't know how old we were, like 8 or 10, 12, something like that, in our pre-adolescence probably, or right at that age. I was disgusted by what they had done to it. They took all of the morality out of it, and they just made it this kind of vapid, superficial story about getting what you want, and sort of love and there was some morality in it, but it was so whitewashed. It was like the original Little Mermaid has to make a choice. You die. You bargained your life for this opportunity. And then she's given one last chance. It's like, well, you can kill him. You can kill the man that you got legs in order to try to be with, who rejected you. Or you will go back into the sea. You will die. And she can't do it. And so she loses her life. And there's a real terrible, tragic beauty to that story that resonates more with the reality of life.
Yeah.
And so these kids that get raised on Disney, and we can't tell kids hard things, we can't share hard things. There's this, no, it's no wonder that when it comes time to individuate and go through the grief of existentialism and recognizing that these things are finite and I'm not this cradled little thing anymore, that they cry out against that. And the problem is a world that tries to sell them solutions to that. You're trying to sell and commodify existentialism, to sell back a solution to that.
Yeah.
And there's no solution because there's no resolution of the finality of life and death.
One theme that comes up in my discourses and trying to grapple with where we are and why is it the way it is, and how do we see it and then discover another way to be, if that's possible. When you look at the historical roots of a lot of the trends that we are existing within now, you see, I had Jason Bradley on. I don't know if I'll publish the episode. I'll have to go through and edit it because it kind of goes in one way or another. But Jason Bradley's done some phenomenal work on Everybody Shook about population control.
He's great.
He's got this video called The Birth of Control, which is very clever.
Oh, yeah.
And he does very excellent work. And I've had him on, and it seems like people respond to him rather negatively because he's
to Jason.
It's a phenomenal phenomenon
Jason.
because he's such a kind guy.
He's so sweet.
And he's
really smart.
He's very smart. He's a very hardworking man. And he's very concerned about this stuff, about population control and the masters of the universe. And he won't come down. At some point I thought he was unwilling to choose a side, but I really genuinely think he's incapable of choosing a side because he sees that these programs, population control, they're all a series of nested reactions to previous
So he thinks that this is inevitable.
And the story that he tells, and then it also maps on to the Enlightenment and Western civilization where it is now. At some point we had this idea that there are problems to be solved, and that if we configure the world into problem and solution, we unlock tremendous amounts of refinement, of exploration, of growth.
But everything's problems to be solved. I mean, even just if you are primitive man and you want food, that's a problem to be solved. I need to eat that, and it's over there. How do I?
There's an inflection point or a tipping point.
Is it about scale again?
Where scale, where we're
Managing other people.
Where the problems became bigger and bigger and bigger, or our point of view became bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we just see everything as problems to be solved.
Yeah.
Like there's this container where, of course, when the caveman needs to eat is a problem to be solved, but he's not trying to fix the world.
Right.
And there's this whole idea like we're going to save the world or we're going to fix the climate change. It's perfect. Or the medical industry, especially in 2020, we're going to save humanity. It's like, wait, hold on. Like, who are you to try to save? Who is man to save man?
Well, and that's interesting because there are times when people's actions end up affecting people way beyond themselves, not because they're trying to, but because they're just being think about the company that dumps industrial waste into the river, right? So when this is happening, there has to be some mechanism for people to correct that action, right? Or to give feedback to that company, or somehow manage that overspill. It's kind of like the metaphor that I was using with you the other day was the guy sitting next to me on the airplane, who was just a really big guy. He was just a large person. He's a really nice guy. He just happened to be way bigger than the airplane seat. And it wasn't because he was fat. He was just a big old guy.
Yeah.
But he was like a good 3 inches over, in maybe 4. That armrest was a distant dream. I couldn't possibly put an elbow on it. And in fact, I was kind of curved like this just so that I didn't accidentally fall asleep on him, because he was like really in my seat.
Yeah.
And those seats are small anyway. So there's like you're just doing you, and you're not trying to bother anybody, but you're spilling over into my space. And so at what point does somebody spill into your space enough that you say, excuse me, and you try to fix that and reoccupy your space? And so government's trying to correct things like that people are doing to each other. That seems like a fair role for government. But then there's also proactive things that they're telling you to do. So climate change, if climate change is this, that's a great topic, because it's just so abstract and it means whatever it needs to mean for the purposes of whoever's talking about it. But then there's environmental
justice.
What would it be? Stewardship.
Yeah.
Like we live here. I don't really want chemicals running onto my land. I don't really want a bunch of toxins in the water. So can we please just make sure we don't do that? There's limits. Or don't deforest. Don't go in and log that entire thing without trying to manage the land in a way. It's like the tragedy of the commons, really. You get back to the tragedy of the commons when you're talking about environmental stuff. So there's a role for big thinking in those kinds of scenarios. But when does it go too far, and when are we over managing other people?
Well, I think it's just a preference cascade, or just a cascade. What Bradley talks about in our conversation, which I don't know if I'll publish or not, but he talks about the history of Rockefeller. And it was either Rockefeller or Rockefeller's son. His child died from some sort of disease, and he eventually figures out how to stamp this worm, one of these worms, and he solved this huge problem he met the right doctor, and they rid millions of people of these worms. And then his son sees that there was this huge gain in quality of life, and then his son needs to go further than that. And, so they start feeding people in Africa, and then there's too many people in Africa, which is leading to too much suffering. So they educate the women and introduce birth control, and then population plummets. And then that's a whole other problem. Now we have to solve the population problem. And it's just this constantly going and going and going, and human beings just creating problems for the next generation to solve.
Did I tell you about that article that I read when our grandson was born, and they whisked him off, put him in the pediatric ICU just because he was he wasn't full term. No. He was like 35 weeks. He wasn't like 36 early. Weeks is full term.
36. So he was a week or 2
40 weeks is like that's the duration, the standard duration of pregnancy. Okay. But after 36 weeks, you're considered
full. So he was a week before.
So he was like a week or a little bit more than a week or something like that. It was maybe he was 34 weeks, but he was fully developed. He was a really healthy baby. They were concerned about his breathing a little bit. Like they want to make sure that he can breathe on his own, because that's the thing that you're worried about, is lung stuff. But the degree of intervention felt very extreme, and he was kept there for a long time. I mean, he was kept there for a month.
Yeah.
And it felt like they were just making sure that they milked the insurance. It really felt like that to me. Yeah. It really looked like that. And that's a whole long story, but that's my daughter's story to go into, not mine, really. But at that time, I was researching this. Like, I was there when he was born, and I watched this happen. And the staff, the nurses, and they would not give any information. They just said, trust me, I do this all the time. You have to trust me. And I could not get anybody, and my daughter couldn't get anybody to give her a rationale and reasons for all of the interventions that they kept doing to this baby. Like, tell me, why does he need that test? Why does he need that blood draw? Why is he being intubated? What's going on with these things? And there was just a complete wall of, we're the experts and we're going to do this. And there's this implicit threat when they have your baby that you don't want to push back against that. Mm-hmm. So I was reading about this over intervention of newborns, and reading these peer-reviewed articles about this. And one doctor who was a pediatric ICU physician said, he wrote this article called "Don't Just Do Something, Stand There," about how these terrible outcomes that babies are having because of over-intervention. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the same thing when it comes to, like, you've started messing with this system, and it turns out to be a really complex system.
Yeah.
So at what point do you just go, okay, maybe we have to let this system self-correct. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not responsible for all of those people over there, and maybe I screwed some stuff up and I have to live with that.
Yeah.
But I don't just do something, stand there, let the system correct itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and then you get to why there's this quote I think I brought up in an interview from not long ago. I hope my voice is even picking up. It's been pointing towards you the whole time. There is this, now I lost it. What is it?
Is it about?
It's a quote. I was a libertarian because I wanted everybody to leave me alone, and then I was no longer a libertarian when I realized nobody would leave me alone. Mm-hmm. There's this kind of or R.M. McIntyre's formulation, like and I don't even know if it's his, the person who wants to be left alone will always lose to the person who wants power.
Mm-hmm.
And then this goes into the whole woke right thing. It's like there's these people on the right that's saying, no, this liberal, let the system decide, let the bureaucracy decide is not enough. We need to capture the institutions so that we can build the society that we want, because other people are doing that and they've gained all of the power. And you can't just live it up to this neutral institution. Anyways, the people who are vying for this this neutral institution, they actually want to be the deciders too. So like there's this thing where you're like, okay, well, we want limited government, but the government has gone so far that it's not possible to limit it without drastic, like just severing the Gorgon knot. And my interview with Leo Sapir, I don't want to give all these spoilers to these other conversations that I'm doing, but I'm sure people tune into this and then tune into something else. And so some feedback back and forth in time is warranted. But in my interview with Leo Sapir about the gender legal issues about the state of Tennessee and the Department of Justice under Biden going to war over whether or not they can ban child gender medical interventions. Tennessee wants to ban them. The DOJ says that's child abuse. It's up in front of the court, the Supreme Court. And when you talk to Leo about it, he's not a lawyer, but he's got a doctorate in constitutional government. So he understands the law very well. And he's like, it's not just this or that, because if they rule this way, then the meaning of the laws become this whole other cascade. And there's all this game within game within game of this legal, and it's all about these words and it's about these concepts. And there's the way that they go over precedent, and they need to bring in experts, because it's not like science or reality. It's all this discussion, which is fine. It's a system, but you realize that system of law in America, because America was founded by lawyers. We are ruled by law. Yeah. And law is this beast.
Amoral.
It doesn't even know what a woman is. Yeah. It doesn't even care.
No, it doesn't care about anybody or anything except, can we rationalize this? Well,
is this,
and can we stack
is this
it on
person
the
versus this person? Who are we going to decide in this one instance? And then it'll cascade.
And then cascade.
But when you realize that the whole this whole system of government isn't just these NGOs and this government that's overstepping, it's just policy. And it's all law. It's just like, and then you have like Elon going against Congress. Congress wants to pass this huge budget bill, and they get it down through AI. They get it down to here. But it's still like, even if they shrink the law and put it into this thing, the law already has its tendrils in every single aspect of our lives. And it's always taking a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And with AI coming in, it's going to be able to parse every one of my sentences and give me a social credit score of whether or not I'm being, like Elon wants Twitter to be more positive. So he wants everybody to share everything on Twitter, but you have to share everything positively or else you're going to be downgraded. So he's shooting himself in the foot because he wants to have a good place. Like he wants to be a good king with a good country. So he can't just be Mr. Freedom. He's got to be Mr. Freedom and control. And there's a balancing act. There's always going to be, like, even on your channel, I'm sure you've banned people on your channel. It's like my channel, like, I'm kind of renting YouTube, or YouTube's kind of renting me in a way and like farming me for commercial, and then they eke me a little bit of money. But even me, I'm like, no, I don't want this person around because you are derailing my conversation. Like, I have a fife, and I'm responsible for having and nurturing a good community right here. And it can only scale so far because I only have so much attention to give, and I'm only so thankfully I'm only so interesting, so only so many people interact with me. But even those people that interact with me, I'm gonna like throw some people out because you're causing chaos. So it's not this simple freedom versus order versus chaos thing. It's like there's rational actors in the system. There's people who have to make decisions and have to be accountable to the people for the decisions that they make. And so that's where values, that's where morality, that's where character, that's where the human being comes in to navigate these different systems. And the thing is about these systems that have grown so big about us, nobody is in charge of them. And even if you did put one person in charge with with a sword over his head, if he goes tyrannical, he gets his head lopped off. Like, even if you have that, the system itself is so beyond any one person's control that what do? We cut it apart. Chaos, massive death, like massive death, or like a civil war, massive death. Like we're on this precipice, and like us little critics of this big monster, I counsel, like, be humble. Like, any idea of like critique will turn into conspiracy theory, will turn into Gnosticism. We're in a prison and there's these evil gods that are feeding on us. Like, we can't even comprehend this thing without using these old forms of knowing. So just be really careful, be as real as possible, be as kind as possible. But, there's friends and there's enemies, and you have to call out that which is evil and go ahead and be free to have enemies. Just beware. Like, if you interact with them in a certain way, that, live by the sword, die by the sword. There's all these different things. Dude, I don't know where I was going with that. But it's truly phenomenally deep and vast and complex. And so any of these political discussions they're cartoonishly, hilariously absurd.
Well, it's just
because we have no idea.
It's the people in Plato's cave talking about the shadows on the wall. At this point.
Yeah, and then right now we're projecting
dramas.
our own shadows of our lights on the wall right now. We all get to make our little finger puppets.
Yeah.
Super chat.
Yeah.
3 blessed super chats.
Oh, nice.
Jenny, always
Jenny.
running in. Have you read The Sparrow by Maria Doria Russell?
I have not.
No,
I haven't. What is that?
The
Sparrow.
Screenshot of that because I can't write it down right now.
Oh, well. Oh, yeah. We don't. I can. Look. Here's your pin.
There's 4. No, I'm going to go
The Sparrow.
4.
Look, I can do it right
I hope I didn't do a screen recording. I think I just started a screen recording. Okay, no. And then Jenny's getting inky with it. Thank you very much. At what point will parents be put in prison for not pre-chewing their kids' food?
Yeah.
And then Andrew. I haven't seen him around in a while. Happy New Year, everyone. Yeah, Happy
Thanks,
New
Andrew.
Year, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to
indeed.
you, too.
Speaking of media.
I would put a plug in for The Return. I thought that was excellent.
With Ralph Fiennes. You can rent it now for $9.99 on Amazon Prime, and you can purchase it.
Which we should have done.
I'm like,
it was so good. Do we have another watch?
We had 48 hours. I think you can watch it more than once, but I don't know if I want to watch it again because we started Ozark.
Yeah.
Which the first episode is brilliantly written. It's very dark, and you are very sensitive to violence and the nastier things in life. And I turned over, you're just like, you're almost gleefully enjoying it.
It's a really good story. It's such a good it's not gratuitous. That's what it is. It's like
it's on the line, but it's not gratuitous.
But it's not for its own sake. It's to tell a story that is, I think it's deeper and more moral. I mean, the story of the central character and the trials that he goes through are done very well. And that, I mean, not to like circle all the way back, but to the return.
Why not?
That is what I appreciated about that so much, because that movie came out just after I finished reading The Odyssey with the boys. And one of the things that, as we were discussing it after we finished it, one of the things we thought was, I don't know if Odysseus comes off as as much of a good guy here. He lies to everybody.
Yeah, that's who he is.
He's constantly lying. He comes home and he orchestrates this absolute bloodbath of the suitors who are there to woo Penelope in his absence. But they think he's dead, and they want the chance to marry the widow and run the property and be the king. And in the story, the suitors are eating all his food and taking over his palace, and there is a plot against his son from the suitors. But the movie takes some license with all of these things, and it really shows the complete brutality of these guys who are just there to gobble up and be greedy and basically terrorize the locals and get plunder the resources and threaten the woman into marriage. And so they make that aspect of it more enhanced and really show that. But they show a different side of Odysseus's character, and they show him as this really war-worn man who's like sickened by the violence that he's perpetrated and endured, and just sickened to his core. Like, he couldn't come home because he couldn't face the purity of his home with what he had become through the war. And I thought that the violence in that movie, which was considerable, was done very artfully. So it wasn't gory at all. There was not, it was just you saw blood spatters.
Yeah.
But, and they showed blood, but they never showed
like cracking skull.
What's become so common in movies is just to see the really visceral, graphic violence of, the war scenes and stuff. So I was kind of afraid it would go there, and I hate that kind of thing. So I thought that the way that they handled that was very artful, and the way that they developed and brought out the morality in the characters was very profound.
Yeah.
So I recommend that. The actor is fantastic too. Ralph,
Fiennes?
is it Ralph?
Yeah.
Fiennes? Yeah.
Fiennes.
He's fantastic.
He doesn't do anything for the longest. He's just there.
There, yeah.
He doesn't do anything.
He's observing and just connecting. He had the stories he told people.
Yeah, he spoke
To
and he showed up places and he did things, but he didn't act.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't claim rulership until the end.
Yeah.
And that rulership, partly I think he waited because he knew what he had to do, which is blood. It's like, it follows me everywhere. War follows me everywhere.
Yeah. And that's different from the book, or the story, because he's plotting that whole time. He's plotting with Athena. He ends up plotting with his son and Eumaeus the swineherd, and they develop. He's cunning. He's lusting after the opportunity to do this in the story, versus in this one, it just shows a very different. Yeah, it's a very different take.
I have to say this. You were annoyed by it for the first 45 minutes, I think. You're like, that's not how it happens. That's not how. I'm like, it's another movie. But then something happened where you're just like, you accepted.
Yeah, well,
and then you embraced. And then you embraced it. Now you just like, you loved it, but you were rejecting it really hard. Your imagination was like, no. I'm like, shut up, bitch. Not really, but kind of, in my nice kind of way. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we watched Wicked last night.
Yep.
God, that movie just would not end. And then it's like, whoa, to be continued. I'm like, oh, God, well, we don't have to continue it. Ariana Grande was in it. I think she was the heart of the film. And not heart, she annoys you in some way.
She
you can talk
annoys
about
me tremendously.
But her overacting.
She had some good things of her performance.
The physicality of her role was very entertaining, very engaging.
Yeah.
She was really fun.
Yeah.
There was some good aspects to the thing, but it went on. The pacing of it was really weird. I'm like, what's going on? There's no build. Like, we have a plot, and then we're going to go back into there's not girl power, so it wasn't really necessarily like girl power, really. But it was really like, what is the core of this story? Is like, is the Wicked Witch, she gains her power, she gains her freedom, and I keep on thinking that, why it was the Emerald City, why it was she was green, why the road was gold. It's the writer of it, whose name I can't, Frank something. He was the whole children's story was this analogy against going off the gold standard.
Oh, was
It was all about the untying of America's financial future from gold into this money printing machine, which is just all this
Really?
completely.
That's what the Wizard of Oz was
Yeah, the
about?
Wizard of Oz is
What?
like this total charlatan that's selling you
Oh my gosh.
immense fortune.
Okay.
And it's weird. So the whole arc of the Wicked Witch, Alphabeta or something, Elphaba, she's the green. She's the dollar. She is like American independence. Like she has this struggling relationship with her father, and she doesn't belong anywhere. But she has immense, tremendous power. If only people believed in her. If she has that book, if insofar as people believe in the dollar, America controls everything. But then America is also this evil thing that can just have power over everything and create and destroy empires, you know.
So then in that formulation, she is the creation of the wizard.
She's literally his daughter in this story. So it's just interesting if there is a deeper meaning to it, like kind of like we Barbied the right wing kind of Barbied Barbie beyond the creator's capacity to control. But the makers of this wicked thing, they don't care about that level of analysis. It's not a woke thing.
I've not read the book. I haven't read it. I haven't seen the musical live. I've only seen this movie.
Yeah, the music was everything was technically proficient, but there's nothing.
Yeah, the music was
memorable.
Not that catchy.
Yeah.
There was like one or two songs that had some catchiness to them, but most of them are kind of drug out a bit. I did like the lead actress much more than I thought I was going to. The girl who plays Elphaba, she was good. I thought she was very good.
Every young man is gay except for one. Like this prince shows up and everybody's so gay. No, there's the
other one named Bach.
Oh, okay,
He's
Bach,
not gay.
the Munchkin guy, who's in love with the princess, but then is going to have a struggle.
Is she a princess?
Well, you know, she's kind of like the
Glinda.
princessy Galinda, the blonde, perfect one.
Yeah.
I guess he's not gay, but it was really weird. There was a lot of like nods to homosexuality. There was no nods to transgenderism that I could pick up, but there was one. There was this row of females, and then there was like this one guy. It's like, wait, there's
who also had long hair and a ponytail.
Yeah, so there was a little AGP, but it was very gay.
Yeah,
and I think it was because it's theater. I think that. It's
I have to say, speaking of the theater thing, when the releases of all of those interviews with those two actresses came out.
We should play that. I should have downloaded that to play because it was so cringy.
So bad.
They were so bad.
And it almost was enough to make me not want to see it. Like, I just,
but something convinced
insufferable. Well, some of the people in my Solid Ground group were talking about it, that they'd seen it, and there was actually a lot of redeeming value to the story and the performance. So I wanted to see it so we could all discuss it.
I didn't pick up the interviews. If you guys find them,
the interviews
online,
are really cringy.
The press junkets for these two women, was so disgustingly self-appreciatory.
Well, but the thing I thought after a while, after I got over the initial like, oh my gosh, that's really horrendous, was these are people who went through a really intensive production and really inhabited their roles. And anybody who's ever done any kind of theater...
They were really together through
anybody who does any kind of theater knows how much you
sympathetic
live that thing and how passionate you become about it. And so what you're actually watching is these two people who are still... I mean, it's almost like they're having a religious experience. Yeah. And so if you're outside of that, looking into it, it looks like culty. Insanity.
Very culty.
But I think that it's just part of the process of really inhabiting that role and that thing. But still, Ariana Grande grates me.
You want to punch her?
Oh, I don't want to punch her. I don't want to punch her. I said I don't like lip augmentation. Yeah. I told you this when. Do you remember when Miley Cyrus was popular and she would always have her tongue out? Yeah. And it was like seeing that tongue all the time. I was like, oh, there's something about that is so revolting to me. And I feel similarly about women who've had their lips done. Their lips are just like overly, I have a visceral reaction to lip augmentation. It's just really
speaking
gross to me.
Of facial enhancements, I was going to do an interview and we went to an island. I got a sunburn and my nose was peeling, so I went into the bathroom and I'm like, I'm rifling through all your stuff, and I finally found some lotion. You found lotion. And I put it on, and then I told you about it later, and you had a panic attack or something.
Yes.
Because one thing that you don't want You don't want me to transition.
No, I don't.
You're
I like
adamant
you the
about
way
that.
you are.
You're adamant
You
about
can grow
that.
as a person, but I don't want you growing into a woman.
Or
a
or into
womanly
your
thing.
clothing or anything
No.
like that. Yeah, so it
It's
turned
so-
out to be like some sort of
It was
like
progesterone.
premenopausal.
It was like a cream, like a progesterone.
So now
cream that you
I have
used on your nose.
I have a tranny nose now. I have HRT on my nose.
So this is how many days on HRT?
How does it look?
How
Is
many
it
days
looking-
on?
It was just one day. I don't feel gynomastia happening yet. But my emotional palette is greatly expanded now.
Yeah?
There's something between glee and anger. I've discovered this whole world of
Are
opportunity.
you crying a lot now? Too? Do you find yourself welling up with tears?
No, but you've been opening doors for me, so that
Yeah, I did.
that-
Actually,
you
yeah, I
did.
did. I did open doors for you yesterday. It was fun.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
So
princess.
I hope I don't have heart failure or something like that
No,
because of this.
don't do it again.
Well, yeah, now I know. There is no
I gave
lotion.
you a tour of the actual
Yeah,
lotion.
we
It is
only
one
use-
lotion.
There's only oils.
There's oils. I only
We
use
use
oils on my face.
Yeah, I just needed to get like my nose was just peeling, so I needed to rub
Not
something
with
on it.
progesterone.
Not with progesterone,
Don't
estradiol.
do it. No, don't use
Estradiol.
that either.
Estradiol or
They're
whatever.
just two different ones.
All right.
Don't use either of them.
Yeah, that was fun.
I'm glad you still have a beard and it didn't all fall out. Yeah.
So we usually end with talking about a recipe, but we didn't. Oh, we've been cooking egg drop soup.
Yeah, you made me a good egg drop soup.
We began
Mm-hmm.
with this egg drop soup exploration.
Mm-hmm.
You made another one. I
Yeah.
think I did the egg better because my egg was still like your egg
I like
was
the
really.
egg very wispy.
Oh, okay.
I don't want chunks of egg.
Oh, you don't want chunks of egg. Okay.
No, you had bigger chunks.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so it's
So,
more. Yeah.
okay, I have to make yours.
No,
separate or
that's fine.
something.
No, that's fine.
Leave
We can
some
do
big
it
chunks.
yours because I like to feel like I'm eating something substantial, and egg drop soup is by definition not substantial. That's like a dietary thing.
You want to have another soup tonight?
I don't know.
I've got some stuff to make soup,
We should think about that.
and I've got a pottery party if you want to go.
Oh yeah.
Want to do it? Holiday party at the pottery studio.
I want out of it if I can, but I don't know if I'm allowed or not.
Yeah.
We took a couple of games with us
see
to.
that.
Whoa, we
It's not
can't.
showing up. It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
white.
It's all-
Sea salt and
okay.
paper.
We took a couple games with us on our vacation. One of the games is Sea Salt and Paper. You can usually get it it goes on sale very often for $9. It's a card game. It's actually really pretty. The cards themselves, the card stock is really cheap, and I really dislike that because you have to shuffle these all the time, and
Yeah, I don't mind it.
If they could have spent a couple more pennies to
What they look
make
like.
it better.
I don't know if I can make
So
it.
there's a bunch of origami on it. You're gonna
light
have to
is so
you're gonna have
bright.
to do a darker one.
Okay, there's
You have to
one.
do a darker one.
Whoops. There. I can't see. It's not me.
It's a very quick game.
Okay.
Lasts about 15,
They're super
20
cute.
minutes.
Little origami creatures. It's really easy to pick up too. It looks complicated, but you'll pick it up very fast. We picked it up within like half a game.
I didn't want to. I got it a while ago, and I'm like, I don't want to learn this. I don't want to teach this. I don't wanna learn
It's
this. I
now
don't
it's
wanna
one of my
teach this."
favorites
Yeah.
because you can play it really quickly
Yeah, you
too.
just
You can just sit down. You
plop
don't
it
have
down.
to play it to whatever number.
Plop it down. There was one other. Because we have people. Your
Oh,
parents
this
came
is
with
a good
us.
one.
Your parents came with us, so
My
we
dad and
needed
my
a game for 6 people, and most of the games that we have is for about
four.
4, 4 or 5, which is just we needed 6.
Yeah.
And so there's this one of the more popular board game designers. His name is Uwe Rosenberg. He's German, and he creates these really huge subsistence farming games mostly. He's
Subsistence farming.
Yeah, basically he has a game about Vikings where you're basically subsistent farming.
What's that one called?
Feast for Odin.
Okay, that's the one you
And
made us
then
play on your birthday.
I have a game coming called Black Forest, which is you are a glassmaker in 1200.
Oh, wow.
The year 1200 in the Black Forest in Germany. And,
Glassmaker. Does it
yeah.
have pretty pieces?
it's a really beautiful production, but basically you're trying to create like a little it's a little economic game with really sparse resources because you're trying to do these things. So he makes these really technically proficient. People really like him or just don't care for him, but he's one of the more well-known designers. But this game is totally not that at all. It's totally goofball. It's called Bonanza, and it's about trading beans. It's an auction game. It plays really fast.
There we go.
It plays well with 4. We haven't played it. I haven't
We
played
played
it
it
with
with
3.
6 also, which was really great.
Yeah, 6 was really
6
great.
was really fun. It's super fun. Yeah.
because everybody is. What happens with this game is that
Will I tilt?
it's
Does it
pretty
work?
simple.
Wax
You have
beam.
to
How
cover
do you
my
do
face.
it?
You have to just cover my face.
Why? Why your face?
Because
It's like
the algorithm
the light
within
is equalizing to
the
you?
algorithm within the iPhone is
Oh.
meant to focus on faces.
Okay.
So the art is
Okay.
totally horrific. I mean,
Yeah, I don't like the art.
no, the art
either.
is terrible. But what happens in
It's
the
not
game?
terrible.
It's really super goofy.
It's not great.
It's really
The colors
cheesy.
are nice though.
But what happens is you're basically planting beans.
Yeah.
And the trick of the game is that you cannot move. Your cards have to stay in the order that they're in.
And then you have to play them in a very specific order.
Unless you trade. And so everybody's trying to
Auction.
Everybody's motivated to get rid of and get beans. And what is beautiful about this game is that everybody brings their self to the game. Everybody's got their way of
Yeah,
getting what they
so
want
true.
and manipulating everybody. Your younger son, Adrian, was really cute. He's like, if anybody wanted to give anything away right now, I could really use some free things, you know? And you are really good with, you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't do that, you know? And your
But then he ended up
mother-in-law-
winning by like a ton.
No, that's the thing with Adrian. I play with Adrian's my principal game partner. He's 11 now. And if the game clicks for him, he's preternaturally really good at figuring out strategies and diving into games. So you can't just say, but if he's not into the game, then he's not into the game.
Yeah.
And if he can't find a story, then he's kind of just like hardly even paying
he's a
attention
story
to the
guy.
game. Yeah.
Totally.
So Bonanza, it's rather cheap. You can probably find it for about $20 or something on Amazon.
Bonanza.
Yeah, that's
Bonanza.
Bonanza. There's an H in there.
how do you-
Bonanza.
yeah, show me how to
it's
do
not
it.
going to work.
What do I do?
It's not going to work.
Oh, look
Bonanza.
at that. Yeah. And that's a 3D printed box
Yeah, it's a
that
little
you
3D
made.
printed box. Anyway, so those are the games on my docket list, and we had a lot of fun with these really short games.
Yep.
Anyhow,
What are you looking forward to this week?
this year,
This year, I guess so. Beginning of the year. Yeah, what are you looking forward to?
I want to set up a productive schedule. I want to lock in a schedule and just pound out productivity for until spring, I guess, until the spring. I need to lock in for the next 3 months. We are going to the ARCS conference. Jonathan Peugeot was very generous and finagled for us a spot to be at the ARCS conference in London
In February.
Yeah, February 16th. So I need to get a suit for that.
Oh, yeah, we need
so
to take
that-
you suit shopping.
So
That'll be fun.
that I'm presentable. I don't need a Jordan Peterson level, like
You don't need, like,
the
the,
Riddler
like,
kind of suit or anything like
Checkers,
yeah,
silk,
nothing.
and
But
whatever.
I need a nice,
Just a nice,
suit.
respectable
Yeah,
man
'cause
suit.
that is about connect. I'm not going to be giving a talk or anything. I probably won't go to a
But
few
you'll be able
talks,
to talk
but
to
like
some
it's
people
it's
and-
really about cross pollinating, and I think that'll be more of the classical liberal / theocratic set. I don't know if there'll be terribly many post liberal DR people there, but I do want to go and visit the Lotus Eaters. I know
They're in that
several
area.
of them. Yeah, Carl Benjamin and Bo Dade, who I've had on, and one other guy, Thomason. These brilliant young lads. And so I do want to spend some time with them and go visit their studio and maybe meet a few other of our British friends, because we do have some British friends. So that's something that is kind of a
That's
couple
gonna be
months
fun.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you looking forward to this season of the winter season?
Lots more good conversations, good connections. We have our late Christmas coming up with my daughter and her family, so I'm
we have
looking forward to
Are you gonna
that.
make moussaka, or am I gonna?
I think
roast-
she's up for the moussaka.
She doesn't like eggplant.
She doesn't, but I'm telling her it's good. I think she'll like it anyway.
Okay, well,
What do
I
you
can
think?
always smoke a tri-tip if you want.
Along with it, tri-tip and moussaka. I want a nice big Greek salad,
Okay, yeah. So I don't
crispy
need to.
and
Yeah.
just really yummy. Maybe you can help me with a good dressing. You can look up a really good dressing and make
okay.
it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. You made a culinary peak of the trip. We had a bunch of avocados.
Oh my gosh, that were just from that the property that we were staying on has an orchard with avocados just grow. I love avocados, so having avocado trees is amazing to me because I'm not from a place, nor do I live in a place where that exists.
Yeah.
But starfruit trees, just starfruit was just crazy everywhere. Macadamia nuts, tangerines, lilikoi, passion fruit, guava.
What are the round ones that you open it up and it's like a little breakfast bowl?
That's the lilikoi.
Lilikoi.
Or passion fruit.
Yeah.
And breadfruit and jackfruit. They have all kinds of stuff in that.
And you put them all into a salad and you blended up some avocado.
And
you made
papayas.
an avocado dressing that was
I made an avocado dressing.
Beautiful. And I knew it would age terribly. Yeah, it would turn into like this brown sludge within 20 minutes.
But we have some avocados right now and some lettuce.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to...
So maybe I'll make more.
That was stellar.
You like that.
We didn't know what was
You know what would be good with that is a little bit of bacon on the salad. Bacon avocado.
Bacon bits?
Like a BLAT salad.
Blat?
A blat salad.
During the Pride Month, some people do LGBT
What's that?
sandwiches. It's lettuce, LG
Gruyere.
Gruyere. Bacon and trannies.
What?
Sandwiches.
Tomatoes.
I don't know if I can say that word actually.
Which word?
TRANNY.
I think it's considered a slur.
Yeah. Okay. So we're probably demonetized.
Yeah. I think it's not considered polite.
Were there any questions? I didn't see any questions. I think people are just chilling out.
I think somebody really liked the idea of you rubbing estrogel on your nose.
Oh yeah. People want the AGP Ben.
Eggplant can be delightful. Yes, Helena, it can.
The Radfems used to accuse me of being a chaser because I would have conversations with transitioners, detransitioners. Anyways, it's great to be back.
I did put lemon juice in it. Yep, lemon juice was in there, so yeah. Probably would have stayed a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Let's see. Breaded eggplant has no equal. That sounds really good, Helena. Love to try that. I like eggplant.
I'm in talks to have Andrew Doyle back on my show.
Oh, good.
We have a raucous good time.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I do have a couple of other conversations coming down the pike, but I need to get some more interviewees.
Oh, the thing I'm really looking forward to right now is going to the pottery studio and making my bowls.
Well, la-di-da.
Finishing my bowls.
Let's call it a night. Thank you very much for joining us. Almost 764 people. I mean, exactly. Well, I mean, come or go. A lot of them are from Twitter. I wonder what people do when they just have Twitter playing, you know? Like, do you ever just listen to Twitter?
No, I never do.
I wonder how people do that. It just doesn't seem very cohesive for that, but yeah. But I'm always looking forward to more attention because I thrive on that. You know me, right?
Yeah.
I just go out hunting. I'm the attention hunter.
That's how you are.
And
just the kind of guy you are.
Sparkly soda shooting out your nose at breakfast. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Have a good week.